This is Arvin Vora, founder of Vora Method and author of How to Get into an Ivy League College. We've talked about analogical reasoning. That's finding two very, very different things and looking for the connections between them. And we know that analogical reasoning is an excellent way to demonstrate intelligence on your essay. So where other people say, I'm really, really smart, trust me, using analogical reasoning within your essay, you can demonstrate intelligence and cleverness. Now, analogical reasoning has an opposite. I call it categorization because it involves taking things that are either identical or nearly identical and showing the big differences between them. In other words, putting them into separate categories. And doing this can show cleverness. This is something that's used by people who give speeches. It's used by professional comedians. It's certainly used in college essays. It's used in writing. It's used in fiction. It's used in movies. It's used all over the place. And the idea behind this is taking things that people usually see as the exact same thing and finding the differences between them. In a little bit, you'll see a couple of clips from Chris Rock where he does this. In one, he's going to talk about the difference between rich and wealthy. People usually think of those as two of the exact same things, but Chris Rock shows the difference, and it's a very memorable. It's one of his most memorable stand-up routines. It's one that's quoted very, very often. And Chris Rock does this a lot. I mean, he does it in many, many of his stand-ups. Many great stand-up comedians use this technique a lot. And if you are really into stand-up comedy, I'm sure if you now think back, you'll realize that comedians do it a lot, because a comedian needs to be not just funny, but also clever, insightful, a truth teller, somebody that sees things that other people don't see. And one way to do that is to use these categorizations. You'll also see Chris Rock discussing the difference between a job and a career, another one of his most famous stand-ups. I'm going to first have you have us take a look at a literary example. This is a famous poem called The Naked and the Nude. Now, to us, we say those two things are the same thing. And in fact, in this poem, he says, by lexicographers construed as synonyms. Lexicographers, by the way, are people who write dictionaries. So he basically says that the naked is one group of people and the nude is a totally different group of people, right? So he talks about how the naked that's the good team. That's like the good kind of naked, and the nude is the evil ones. So here he says, lovers without reproach may gaze on bodies naked and ablaze. The Hippocratic eye means like a doctor's eyes. We'll see in nakedness anatomy. Doctors look at naked people because they need to cure them. And naked shines the goddess when she mounts her line among men. The idea even a goddess can be naked. Now, what about nude? Nude is the evil kind of naked. The nude are bold, the nude are sly, to hold each treasonable eye while draping by a showman's trick, their dishabille and rhetoric. They grin a mock religious grin and scorn at those of naked skin. So he's showing the differences between them. He's showing the nude as this evil version and the naked as the good guys. And because this is a clever and unexpected thing, this is one of Robert Graves' most famous poems. And you can use this in a lot of different areas. I'm going to show you a couple more, one more literary example that's really a really famous one, and I'm going to show you how you can do this, and I'll show you something that actually came out of a tutoring session. So let's look over here. This is from the book Moby Dick, and in Moby Dick is a story where Captain Ahab and his crew is trying to hunt down this evil white whale called Moby Dick. The white whale initially bit off the Captain Ahab's leg, and he has a personal vendetta. Plus, he's been looking for him. Now, in this chapter, Herman Melville goes on and he talks about how even though we often think of white as being this positive, pretty, friendly color, earlier talks about pearls and white elephants and all that kind of stuff. He then shows how the same color white can become this other type of white. You have good white and bad white. Now, it's the same exact color, but by creating this categorization, he again really creates like a very intense mood of foreboding and whatnot. So let's read just a couple. I'm not going to read the whole chapter. Let's read a couple parts of it. This elusive quality, which this elusive quality it is, which causes the thought of whiteness when divorced from more kindly associations and coupled with any object terrible in itself to heighten the terrors the furthest bound. What he's saying, if you take the positive associations away from whiteness and then put it with something that's kind of terrifying, it makes that thing extra terrifying. Here's examples. Witness the white bear of the poles, polar bears, the white shark of the tropics. What but their smooth, flaky whiteness makes them the transcendental horrors they are. And he gives, he goes on and on about this. Let's look at the other part. But bethink thee of the albatross, when comes those clouds of spiritual wonderment and pale dread, in which that white phantom sails in all imaginations. So he talks about something else that's white, but he's now making white this unnerving color. When you first hear about the white whale in the book, most people are like, oh, it's like a white whale. It seems like it can be like less scary than any other kind of whale. I mean, it's going to be this harmless, cute white. No, he's going to set you right straight in this thing. And by showing that there's actually two kinds of the color white, using that categorization, he really drives the point home. He opens a whole new way of thinking about just a color. And in doing so, it creates a really unforgettable, illustration. I mean, Moby Dick, even though it's a fairly difficult book to read, for many reasons, has withstood the test of time. And one of them is that horrific kind of creepiness that Melville managed to implant. I'm going to show you one that came out of a tutoring session. Let's go back to this original image. In this tutoring session, I was working with a student. I wanted to show him this idea of categorization. So I said, well, give me two things that are... Just give me one thing, and I'll show you how to split into categories. And he first gave me apple. And I said, no, that's too easy. It's too easy. You have many different types of apple. They're all different. They're used for different things. They already have different associations. Give me something that doesn't have that. So he said, well, how about a baseball? And let's look at a baseball. There's one kind of baseball. Or is there? At a physical level, at the atomic level, yeah, there's one kind of baseball. A baseball is a baseball. But what we discussed in that session was the difference between a practice ball that you'd use during practice and the game ball. Now, mechanically and physically, the practice ball and the game ball are the same, but emotionally, they're not the same at all. Imagine descriptions you could add to the game ball. The game ball, if you hooked up the game ball to a lie detector, would just send the readings off the chart because of all the intensity and tension in the game ball itself, as a simple example. And you could really explore those differences. And just as you can use analogical reasoning to create an interesting theme, you can use categorical reasoning to also create an interesting theme. If you're talking about the difference between a game ball and a practice ball, you could then apply that ideology to literally anything. You could apply it to music. You could apply it to math. You could apply it to ancient literature. You could apply it to poetry. You could apply it to computers. You could apply it to literally anything you want because it's a powerful theme. And the creation of themes is one of the more effective things you can do with categorical reasoning, but not the only one. You can use it to create clever descriptions. You can use it to create excitement within a paragraph, but it's going to be a tool that you use just as often as you're going to use analogical reasoning, which is our number one. Analogical reasoning is going to be number one. Categorical reasoning is going to be like number 1.1. It's not number two. It's still number one. It's right there at the top along with that. So see how you can play around with this. You're going to do some exercise, and I promise you're going to find many different ways to use this type of reasoning within your essays.